She texted the wrong number asking for help. The mafia boss replied with one word. Midnight in Port Meridian. The city doesn't sleep. It just holds its breath. The fog rolling off the Pacific choked the streetlights, making the alley outside my apartment building look like the bottom of a glass of milk. I was standing in that alley, right by the busted security door of my tenement. The air smelled like old rain, rust, and the sour tang of Mr. Kovach's breath. He was blocking my way, his bulk filling the narrow frame of the doorway. He had a keychain with a single, shiny key on it, and he kept tossing it, the metal hitting his damp palm with a soft, repetitive slap. Rent's due, Nora. He slurred. He'd been drinking again. His eyes, small and buried in his fleshy face, roamed over me. And you're late. 3 days. It's the first? Mr. Kovach, I told you. I get paid on the 5th, just 4 more days. My voice was a useless, thin thing. I clutched my barista apron, still damp with spilled espresso, tighter to my chest. He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. The 5th, always the 5th. You college kids think you own the world. He stepped closer. I backed up against the graffiti-covered brick. Maybe we can arrange a different kind of payment. He reached out, his fingers thick and dirty, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. Ice water flooded my veins. This was it. The moment I had dreaded since I moved into this 200-square-foot box 8 months ago. I have the late fee, I whispered, fumbling with my backpack zipper. I have $40. 40. He spat on the pavement. That doesn't even cover the interest, sweetheart. He leaned in, and the smell of cheap whiskey made me gag. That lock on your door, number 407, it's old, real old, a good shove, and... He shrugged, smiling. Things happen. A girl alone. He wasn't just threatening me, he was promising. I'll have the money, I said, louder this time, pushing past him. The momentum surprised him, and I scrambled through the door into the yellow, flickering light of the lobby. I didn't wait for the elevator, the one that smelled like urine and worked only half the time. I took the stairs, my keys shaking so hard I could barely fit the right one into the lock of 407. I slammed the door, threw the deadbolt a joke. It was barely anchored in the drywall and leaned against the wood, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. My hands were numb. I ripped my phone from my pocket. Maya, I needed Maya. She lived 3 blocks over. She'd know what to do. My fingers flew across the screen, slick with sweat. Kovach is outside. He threatened me, said he's coming in. Please call the cops. I'm scared. 407. My thumb spasmed on the last digit of her number. A 9 instead of an 8. I didn't see it. I just hit send. I stared at the message. Sent, delivered. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I could hear the building groaning, the pipes rattling. I could hear, faintly, Mr. Kovach's heavy footsteps in the hall below. He was pacing. Or was he coming up? My phone vibrated in my hand, a violent buzz that made me yelp. I looked down, expecting Maya's name. It was an unknown number, a single-word reply. Run! I stared at the screen. Run. What did that mean? Was this Maya, on a new phone, telling me to get out? My brain couldn't process it. Then, as if the message itself had pulled a switch, the lights in the hallway outside my door went out. Click! Total darkness. The weak yellow light under my door vanished. My breath hitched. I heard the stairwell door slam open on my floor. It wasn't Kovach's slow, drunken shuffle. This was fast, heavy. More than one person. Booted footsteps, measured and professional, coming down the hall. The word on my phone screamed in my head, "Run!" I didn't think. I didn't grab my wallet, my keys, or my textbooks. I ran to the window at the end of my tiny kitchenette, the one that looked out over the fire escape. I fumbled with the latch stuck, painted over 12 times. With a sob of raw panic, I slammed my elbow into the glass. It shattered. The cold night air hit my face. I didn't feel the glass slicing my arm. I scrambled through the frame, my sneakers landing on the rusty metal grill of the fire escape. Behind me, my apartment door splintered. The frame gave way with a single deafening crack. I flew down the iron stairs, my feet barely touching the steps. The metal shrieked in protest. I hit the alley pavement, a drop of about 10 feet, and my knees buckled. But I didn't fall. I sprinted toward the street. The parking lot across the alley was empty, a wasteland of cracked asphalt and flickering streetlights, except for one car, parked in the deepest shadow, a black sedan, no gloss, just flat, menacing black. It didn't have a license plate. Its headlights snapped on, pinning me like an insect. The engine, which had been silent, rumbled to life. It wasn't Kovac. Kovac was a drunk loser in a stained tracksuit. This was something else. This was professional. The sedan rolled forward, cutting off my path to the main street. My fear turned into something colder, sharper, survival. I spun around, heading back the way I came, toward the other end of the alley. My phone vibrated again. I ripped it from my pocket as I ran, the same number. Turn left, night market, do not stop. I didn't question it. The sedan was behind me, its engine revving. I took the left, bursting out of the alley and straight into the chaos of the Port Meridian night market. The change was violently abrupt. I went from silent, dark concrete to a wall of sound and neon. Red lanterns swung over stalls piled high with grilling squid and simmering noodles. The air was thick with steam, chili oil, and the shouts of vendors in half a dozen languages. People jostled me, but I didn't slow down. I weaved through the crowd, a ghost in a sea of faces. I risked a look back. The sedan was blocked by the mass of people, but two men in dark suits had gotten out. They were moving through the crowd, purposeful, their eyes scanning. They saw me. I ducked between a stall selling cheap electronics and another hanging roasted ducks. My heart was a trapped bird. The alleyway was a dead end, a brick wall covered in moss. I was trapped. The two men entered the alley, blocking the only way out. They smiled. Suddenly, headlights flooded the narrow space, brighter than the sun, throwing our shadows into sharp relief against the brick. A new vehicle, a massive SUV, all black paint and gleaming chrome, had mounted the curb and blocked the alley entrance. It was so large it scraped the brick on both sides. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. The noise of the market seemed to fade, the neon lights dimming in his presence. He moved with an unhurried grace that was more frightening than any threat. He was tall, dressed in a dark, perfectly tailored suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His dark hair was swept back. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine, not in a filthy alley. He looked at the two men, who had frozen, their smiles gone. Then his eyes found me, pressed against the wall. He didn't look angry. He didn't look concerned. He looked curious. He tilted his head, just slightly, as if I were a math problem he hadn't seen before. I knew that face. Everyone in Port Meridian knew that face, even if they had only seen it in grainy photos online or whispered about in fear. Cassian Rourke, the head of the Rook Syndicate, the man who owned the shadows of this city. He spoke, his voice quiet but carrying easily over the distant market din. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to his driver, a man built like a refrigerator who had emerged from the other side of the SUV. Clean. Just one word. The driver nodded and started toward the two men. Cassian Rourke didn't even watch. His gaze was locked on me. The realization hit me so hard I thought my knees would give out. The text, the wrong number. The 9 instead of the 8. I hadn't texted Maya. I had texted the Mafia boss. I had just asked the most dangerous man in Port Meridian for help, and he had actually shown up. The back door of the SUV closed with a heavy, soundproof thunk. The chaos of the night market vanished, replaced by a silence so thick it pressed against my eardrums. The only sound was the expensive, quiet hum of the engine and the distant, muted thud of my own heart. The air inside was different. It smelled of rich, clean leather, the faint tang of ozone from the air filters, and something else, a subtle, sharp scent of sea rain and wool. It was his scent, It was the smell of power. I was sitting on a seat softer than my own bed. My hands, resting in my lap, wouldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline that had gotten me down the fire escape was draining away, leaving a cold, trembling void. My phone, still clutched in my right hand, slipped from my sweaty grip. It clattered onto the plush floor mat. I flinched, a stupid small movement, before I could even bend to retrieve it. Cassian Rourke moved. He leaned over, his arm brushing my knee. I felt the warmth of him through my thin jeans. He picked up the phone, not by the screen, but delicately, by the edges. He placed it in my lap. Then, he shrugged out of his own coat. It was a heavy, dark wool, soft as cashmere. He didn't throw it. He placed it over my shoulders. The weight was immediate, a grounding, warm blanket that smelled strongly of him. It swallowed me. I stared straight ahead, at the tinted divider separating us from the driver, Merrick. "Who knows you're alone?" His voice was a low vibration, a rumble that seemed to come from the car itself. It wasn't a question of concern, it was a question of data. My voice came out as a squeak. I cleared my throat. "My friend, Maya, I was texting her, or I thought I was." The words started to tumble out, disorganized, tripping over each other. "My landlord, Mr. Kovach. He wanted the rent. It's not due until the 5th. I had $40, but he said he could break the lock. He touched my hair." I stopped, my throat closing. I was ashamed to be talking about my pathetic, cheap life to a man who probably owned the building I lived in. I ran inside. I tried to text Maya. I must have typed the number wrong. 1 digit, a 9 instead of an 8, and then you replied. I didn't mention the sedan. I didn't mention the men who got out. Kovach was a monster I could understand. The sedan was a monster I couldn't. Admitting I saw it felt like admitting I was part of a game I didn't even know was being played. Cassian Rourke was silent for a long moment. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking out the side window, at the neon-slick streets of the market blurring past. He pressed a small button on the armrest. "Merrick." The driver's voice came back instantly, disembodied, through a speaker. "Sir." "The tenement on Huron, 4th floor. The landlord's name is Kovach. Find out what he looks like. I want a perimeter on that building until I say so. And Merrick." "Sir." "He's been installing fake security cameras in the hallways to intimidate his tenants. Neutralize them. All of them." "Understood." The speaker clicked off. Neutralize. He said it like he was asking someone to take out the trash. I shivered, burrowing deeper into the coat. Kovach was a problem. Cassian Rourke just deleted problems. His attention returned to me. It felt physical, like a hand turning my chin. I finally met his gaze. His eyes were not black, as I'd imagined. They were a dark, complex gray, like the color of the ocean just before a storm. They were looking at me, but I had the distinct, terrifying feeling they were seeing me, seeing the frayed cuff of my sleeve, the old panic in my pupils, the lie of omission about the sedan. "You're still shaking," he observed. He reached out, not to my shoulder, not to my face, but to my left wrist, where it protruded from the massive sleeve of his coat. I flinched, pulling back instinctively. His hand stopped, hovering in the air between us. He didn't retract it. He just waited. Slowly, as if I were calming a wild animal. I let my hand rest on the leather seat. His fingers, warm and dry, closed gently around my wrist. It wasn't a grab. It was a capture. His thumb pressed lightly against the thin skin, right over the frantic pulse point. I watched, mesmerized, as his thumb felt the rhythm of my blood. It was the most clinical, most controlling, and most strangely gentle touch I had ever experienced. He was taking my vitals like a doctor, but holding my wrists like a possessor. After a few seconds, he released me. The absence of his touch left my skin cold. I had to get out. This was too much. This was a world of shadows, and I was made for fluorescent lights and coffee-stained counters. "Thank you," I managed, my voice stronger. "Thank you for scaring him. And the coat. I can..." I can walk to my friend's place from here. It's just a few blocks. I made a move toward the door handle. His hand didn't move, but his voice stopped me cold. You're not safe, Nora, and it has nothing to do with your landlord. I froze. He knew my name. I had never told him my name. He had seen it on the text. I reasoned. My brain was scrambling. He said Nora. He knows my name. But it was the second part that iced my blood. He knew about the sedan. He knew I was lying. The men in the alley, he continued, his voice flat, were not working for Mr. Kovac. They were waiting for you. Kovac was just the leverage to get you out into the open. The car was moving again, pulling away from the market and onto the main thoroughfare, heading toward the upscale towers by the water. I was a prisoner, wrapped in luxury, being driven to God knows where by the one man the entire city was afraid of. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. I watched the lights of Port Meridian slide by, but all I saw was his reflection in the glass. He wasn't looking at me. He was just thinking. The SUV glided to a stop under a discreet, elegant awning, the Velvet Crown. It was a boutique hotel I'd only ever walked past, a place where a single night cost more than my monthly rent. Merrick was out of the car and had my door open before I could even process where we were. Cashin got out and walked toward the entrance. I hesitated. Come, he said, not looking back. I scrambled out, the huge coat trailing, and hurried after him. The lobby was all dark wood, low, warm lighting, and the scent of lilies. A woman with sleek black hair stood behind a single marble podium. She saw Cassian and her professional smile didn't waver, but her eyes widened. Just for a second, my sis. He didn't stop. A room. Single keycard. Of course. Mr. Rourke. For Miss Gray, he said, and kept walking toward the elevators. The woman nodded, swiped a card, and held it out. Merrick, who had followed us in, took it and handed it to Cassian. We stepped into an elevator paneled in mirrored bronze. The doors slid shut, encasing us in a small, silent box. It was just him and me. The air was too small. I could feel the heat radiating off him. He hadn't pressed a button. The elevator was already moving, gliding upward, a private elevator. Why run, he asked. The question was so unexpected. It took me a second. What? My text. I sent you one word. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't ask why. You just ran. He was watching me in the bronze reflection. I thought about it. The darkness, the sound of the boots, the absolute certainty of the command. Because sometimes, I said, my voice quiet but steady, standing still is the fastest way to get caught. His lips quirked, the barest hint of a smile gone as fast as it appeared, a flicker of something approval, maybe passed through his gray eyes. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened onto a private, carpeted hallway. There was only one door. He walked to it and swiped the card. The light flashed green. He stepped aside and handed me the card. Stay here. Don't leave the room. Don't call anyone. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Merrick. Am I clear? But, my friend, my classes, my job, none of that matters right now, he said, his voice absolute. Am I clear? I nodded, my throat tight. I took the key. I walked into the room. It was huge, a king-sized bed, a wall of windows overlooking the glittering, dark ocean. I stopped just inside the doorway and turned back. He was still there, watching me. I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions. Who are you? Who were those men? Why me? What do you want? But all I said was, you knew my name. I know a lot of things. Nora Elridge, he replied. I know you're a part-time student at Port Meridian City College. I know you're studying art history. I know you work 40 hours a week at the grind stop on 5th. And I know you're in very serious trouble. He pulled the door shut. The lock engaged with a heavy, expensive click. It was the sound of a vault ceiling. I stood there for a full minute, just breathing. The silence of the room was as loud as the market had been. I finally moved, my legs feeling like lead. I walked past the bed to the floor-to-ceiling mirror by the closet. I saw a girl, a stranger. She was swimming in a dark wool coat that probably cost more than my entire tuition. Her hair was a mess. Her face was pale, and there was a small, drying smear of blood on her arm from the window glass. She was safe from Mr. Kovac, but she had been rescued by a different, more dangerous kind of monster. She had been saved by the Rook Syndicate, and now, she was in the cage. I spent the first hour, or maybe it was 3, just standing at the window of the hotel room, the Velvet Crown. I was on the 22nd floor, higher than I had ever been in my life. Port Meridian looked different from up here. It looked clean. From this high, you couldn't see the grime on the sidewalks or smell the fish rot from the docks when the tide was low. You just saw the lights, a smear of neon jewelry. The fog was a living thing, a blanket of gray rolling in off the Pacific, swallowing the tops of the suspension bridges. I watched the Sky Spine monorail, a glowing caterpillar, glide silently between the downtown towers, ferrying people I would never know to lives I couldn't imagine. My neighborhood, Old Cinder, was just a patch of darkness to the east, a place the expensive lights didn't bother to touch. It was a grid of old brick tenements, warehouses, and shipping offices, all bleeding rust into the harbor. I'd heard the whispers at the coffee shop, the half-joking warnings from the other baristas. Everyone knew Old Cinder was Rook Syndicate territory, Cassian Rourke's territory. He owned the night trade, the protection rackets, the flow of goods that never saw a customs manifest. And now, I was his guest, or his prisoner. There was a knock. It wasn't the heavy, certain knock of a man. This was a light, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. Cassian's orders echoed in my head. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Merrick. I backed away, toward the hotel phone, my hand shaking. The knock came again, followed by a voice, crisp and female, cutting through the thick wood. Miss Elridge, my name is Inez Falk. Cassian sent me. May I come in? I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The woman in the hall was the opposite of me in every way. She was tall, with raven black hair pulled back into a severe, perfect bun. She wore a charcoal gray pencil skirt and a white silk blouse that probably cost more than my month's rent. She looked like a surgeon or a CEO, and she was holding a slim tablet computer. I unfastened the chain and opened the door. She glided in, bringing a scent of expensive, sharp perfume that wasn't floral. It smelled like gin and ozone. I am Cassian's strategist, she said, her voice matching her appearance. Her eyes, a very dark brown, scanned the room, then me. It wasn't a friendly look. It was an assessment. She was cataloging my vulnerabilities. He asked me to look into your situation. She didn't sit. She walked to the window, her back to me, her silhouette stark against the glittering city. First, she began, her voice impersonal, your landlord, Mr. Kovac, has disappeared, vanished. It seems he had some significant outstanding gambling debts that were suddenly called in. He won't be bothering you again. I stared at her back, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. Disappeared, just like that. Second, she continued, your apartment, it was tossed. Not by Kovac. This was professional, very clean. They went through the walls, the plumbing, the ventilation. They were looking for something small. My stomach turned to ice, but I ran. They broke the door down right after. Inez turned. A flicker of something, was it pity, impatience in her eyes. That was the second team, the men in the black sedan. The first team was already inside. They've been in and out of your apartment for days. That's impossible. I locked my door. They used a key, she said, cutting me off. We found yours, the one you think you have, in the hallway outside your unit. It's a cheap copy, made at a hardware store. Your real key was swapped, probably days ago. Someone has been inside your apartment while you slept, while you showered. They were watching you. Miss Elridge, waiting. The air left my lungs. The feeling of violation was so profound it made me dizzy. What do they want? I don't have anything. I'm a student. I work at a coffee shop. We believe they're looking for a data packet, Inez said. It's a rumor, a ghost story that's been circulating in the underworld for a few weeks. Something big enough to realign the city, both the shadows and the suits. Something that could burn down everyone. She finally looked at me, her gaze pinning me, and for some reason, they think you have it. That's insane. Insanity is the baseline in this business, she replied. You've attracted the attention of Sebastian Vale. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. Even I knew that name. The 9th Street Covenant. They didn't run the docks or the clubs. They ran information. They ran blackmail. They ran the politicians. Vale doesn't use bullets when a whisper will do, Inez said, as if reading my thoughts, which makes him infinitely more dangerous than the usual thugs. He thinks you're a key, Miss Elridge, a key you don't even know you're holding. And the police, I whispered, the word feeling stupid as I said it. The BUI. Inez actually laughed. It was a cold, sharp, mirthless sound. The Bureau of Urban Integrity. They're a sieve, leaking information like an old net. Half of their agents are on Vale's payroll. The other half are on ours. You go to them. You'll be dead before the paperwork is filed. Cassian Rourke is the only reason you're still breathing. She walked to the door. Get some rest. Merrick is outside. We will be moving you again before dawn. She left as silently as she arrived. I was alone again, but the room felt colder, the cage smaller, a key I don't know I'm holding. Hours passed. I didn't sleep. The sky turned from inky black to a deep, bruised purple. The rain started, soft at first, then harder, lashing against the thick glass. The key card reader by the door beeped. I jumped, my heart pounding. The door opened and Cassian Rourke entered. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, just the white shirt and black trousers. His sleeves were rolled up to his forearms, revealing strong, lean muscles and the edge of dark ink on his right arm. He looked tired, but his energy still filled the space, displacing the air. He didn't speak. He just jerked his head toward the door. Where are we going? I asked, my voice hoarse. Rooftop, I need to think, and you need air. The roof of the Velvet Crown was a different world. It was designed as a bar, a glass-walled garden. But it was closed now, slick with rain. The wind was loud up here, a physical thing that tore at my hair and clothes. Merrick stood by the stairwell door, a silent, unmoving sentinel. Cassian walked to the very edge of the roof, looking down at the city lights bleeding into the wet pavement 30 stories below. I stood a few feet behind him. The rain was cold, plastering my thin t-shirt to my skin. I was still wearing my jeans and sneakers. Inez told me, I said, my voice rising to be heard over the wind, about Vale, about my apartment, about the key. He nodded, not turning. She's right. She said they think I'm a key. You are? His voice was low, yet it cut through the storm. They were hunting you. Nora. They just didn't know you had a protector. You, I said, a bitter laugh escaping me. You're not my protector. You're a criminal. You're the reason men like that exist. He turned then. His gray eyes were flat, unreadable in the dark, but they were locked on me. The rain dripped from his dark hair onto his face. Sebastian Vale wants this city, to get it. He needs to break my organization. To do that, he needs this data packet. And right now, he thinks you are the map. That makes you the single most valuable and most endangered person in Port Meridian. He took a step closer, invading my space, forcing me to tilt my head back to look at him. The smell of the rain and the wool from his coat, which was still in the room, clung to him. I don't care about the packet, he said, his voice a low growl. But if anyone wants to touch this girl, they have to step over me. My breath caught, the way he said it. It wasn't a boast, it was a fact, a law of physics he was imposing on the world. I was trapped, caught between two monsters, and one of them had just declared ownership. I looked away, unable to hold his gaze. I looked out at the city, at the building opposite us, a glass and steel monolith, dark. And in one of the unlit windows, I saw it. A tiny spark of light, a reflection where there should be none, the glint of a lens. I didn't even think. I grabbed Cassian's arm, my fingers digging into his bicep. Someone's watching. Merrick was moving before the words were even out of my mouth. He was a blur. He grabbed Cassian by the shoulder, shoving us both back toward the stairwell door, his body shielding us. Sniper rooftop, east, get down. A split second later, the glass panel where Cassian had been standing exploded into a spiderweb of shattered crystal. The game had begun. We never went back to the Velvet Crown. Merrick drove us out of the city as the sun came up, the SUV eating the miles of coastal highway. We arrived at a place that didn't look real. It was called Rook House. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress of modern glass, dark steel, and old stone, clinging to a cliffside over the raging Pacific. It was isolated, beautiful, and terrifying. The only way in was a private, guarded tunnel carved straight through the mountain. I was given a room with a window that was just a sheet of glass separating me from a 100-foot drop to the ocean. I was a bird in a very expensive, very secure cage. 2 days passed. I saw no one but a silent housekeeper who brought me food. On the third day, Inez Falk appeared. She was holding a simple, brown paper-wrapped package. "This arrived at a secure drop," she said, placing it on the large oak desk. Her voice was clipped. "It has no return address, but the delivery was unconventional. It was left by someone who knew how to bypass the first 2 layers of our mail security. Cassian thought you should open it." My hands trembled as I tore the paper. Inside, nestled on a bed of yellowed foam, was a pager, a brick, a relic from the 1990s, heavy and black. Tucked beside it was a small, folded piece of paper, like a note from a school locker. I unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, a precise angular script. It read, 0917, bring it home. 917, a time, a code, and the last 3 words. Bring it home. Home, I said, the word tasting like ash. Home is my apartment. It's sealed. Kovac is gone. I can't. Home, Cassian said, his voice coming from the doorway. I hadn't heard him approach. He was leaning against the frame, watching me. Home is where you are safe, where your assets are protected. To the person who sent this, he motioned to the room, the fortress, is now home. As if his voice had triggered it, the pager on the desk vibrated, a harsh, buzzing sound that made me jump. The small, green-lit screen lit up. It was just a series of flashing dashes and dots. I stared at it, confused, but as I watched the pattern repeat, something clicked deep in my memory. Mr. Henderson's high school radio club, a forgotten skill buried under years of coffee orders and art history lectures. My lips moved before my brain caught up. S-K-Y. S-P-I-N-E. I looked up, my heart hammering. Sky spine. It's spelling sky spine. The code continued. H-U-R-O-N, Huron, Sky Spine Huron Station. Cassian was at my side in an instant, his eyes locked on the screen. The pattern flashed again. Locker, I translated. 7, my 4, 9. Silence. Cassian looked at Inez. Get it. It could be a trap. Cassian, she warned. Or everything is a trap, he replied, not taking his eyes off the pager. Go. Inez was gone. I was left alone with Cassian and the silent, flashing message. An hour later, Merrick returned. He wasn't carrying a bomb or a briefcase. He just placed a single object on the desk in front of me. It was a USB drive, but not a normal one. It was a stylish key fob, cased in brushed silver, clearly designed to be attached to an expensive purse. It was elegant, feminine, and on the side, in a small, looping script, were two engraved initials. M.E. M.E., I whispered. I don't know anyone with those initials. Cashin's gaze was intense, analytical. He was connecting dots I couldn't see. Your mother, he said. It wasn't a question. I flinched. My mother, she left. When I was 12, she just left. It was the story I had told myself for a decade, the story the police had told me, a cold case, voluntary disappearance. Miriam Elridge, Cassian stated, an internal auditor for one of the city's largest private equity firms, a firm that, coincidentally, was a major investor in the original Sky Spine development. She didn't leave. Nora, she vanished, right after she flagged a 9-figure discrepancy in their ledgers. I felt the blood drain from my face. How do you know that? It's my business to know things, he said, his voice softening just a fraction. He nodded at the drive. Inez, who had returned with Merrick, stepped forward with a laptop. She examined the drive. It's not a standard USB port, and this is interesting. She pointed to a small, dark square on the side, near the initials. It's a biometric scanner, a fingerprint reader, but it's tiny, almost childlike. Her eyes met mine. Try it, Cashin ordered. Me, why me? M.E., he said. Miriam Elridge. She left a trail for her daughter. She left a key only her blood could open. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the drive. I looked at Cassian, my whole world tilting on its axis. My mother hadn't abandoned me. She had been what silenced. I pressed my thumb against the small, dark square. For a second, nothing. Then, a faint click came from inside the device. A tiny, pinprick-sized blue light glowed to life next to the scanner. It was open. It was keyed to me. A genetic lock. My mother had left me a legacy. What is it? I breathed. We're about to find out, Inez said, plugging it into a specialized port on her laptop. Before her fingers could hit the keyboard, Cassian's personal phone, the one he kept on his hip, vibrated. He glanced at the screen. His face hardened. Give me the room, and he said. Inez and Merrick vanished without a word. Cassian answered the call, putting it on speaker. Mr. Rourke, this is Agent Rain Hollis with the Bureau of Urban Integrity. The voice was smooth, professional, and confident. The voice of the law. We've been observing some unusual activity surrounding one of your properties, and we have reason to believe you are in contact with a person of interest, a Miss Nora Elridge. My blood turned to ice. The BUI, the cops, the good guys. I'm listening, Cashin said, his voice a flat, cold line. Miss Elridge is in grave danger, Hollis continued. We believe she is in possession of an item related to an ongoing, multi-agency investigation. We are prepared to offer her full witness protection. We need to bring her in, and we need her to turn over the item in her possession. The item, the USB, my mother's key, they knew. How could they know? She's safe where she is, Cassian said. With all due respect, Mr. Rourke, safe is a relative term when you're in a house with a man like you. She's a civilian. She needs official protection. We have a car 20 minutes from your position. Just let her walk out. We'll handle the rest. It was the perfect way out, the legal way out. I could walk out that door, hand them the drive, and be free. I could go into witness protection, get a new name, a new life. I looked at Cassian. He was watching me, not the phone. He was letting me choose. He's lying, Cashin said quietly, his voice just for me, though the agent could hear him. Excuse me, Hollis's voice sharpened. I said, you're lying, Agent Hollis, Cassian said, his voice rising, full of cold command. You don't want to protect her. You want the drive. Your organization is leaking like a rusted bucket, and you just broadcast to Sebastian Vale exactly where she is and what she has. Your offer is a death sentence. That is a serious accusation, Hollis said, his voice losing its polish. It's a serious world. Cassian looked at me. The choice is yours. Nora, them, or me. I was standing between two worlds. One was the law, the BUI, the official story. They wanted signatures, procedures, and for me to surrender my mother's last message. The other was a criminal, a mafia boss, a man who had killed or ordered it, without a doubt. But he was also the man who had told me to run, the man who had put his own body between me and a sniper's bullet. The BUI wanted the USB. Cassian just wanted me to have it. He just said the item in her possession, I said, my voice shaking but finding a new, hard edge. He didn't say a USB drive. He doesn't know what it is. He's fishing. Cassian's lips quirked in that ghost of a smile. I looked at the phone, then at Cassian. My decision was made. I keep the USB, I said, my voice clear and loud. Cassian nodded once. And I keep you alive, he finished. He picked up the phone and ended the call, cutting off Agent Hollis's protests. He turned to me, the fortress silent around us, the weight of my mother's legacy humming in the small silver drive in my hand. They're coming, I said. Yes, he replied. Let's be ready for them. Cassian led me to the library. Of all the rooms in this fortress, this one felt the most like him. It was 2 stories tall, walled with dark mahogany shelves that smelled of old paper, polish, and the faint, clean tang of the sea. A fire crackled in a fireplace large enough to stand in. The entire wall facing the cliff was glass, and the storm raged against it. A silent, violent movie of water and wind. He didn't turn on the main lights. The only illumination came from the fire and a few green-shaded lamps on the massive, empty desk. He walked to a far wall which was covered by a framed 17th century map of the North Atlantic. He pressed a spot on the map, and a section of the bookshelf slid back with a whisper-quiet hiss, revealing a heavy, black steel safe. "This is the heart of the house," he said. His voice was low, resonant in the quiet room. "The network is air-gapped. The walls are shielded. The contents are known only to me." He pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner, and the safe clicked open. "And now, to you." He took my hand. I flinched, but his grip was firm, not rough. He guided my right thumb to the scanner. "Press. It will register you." I did. The scanner flashed green once, registering my print into its memory. He opened the heavy door. "Put it inside. Nora, it will be safer there than anywhere else in the world." My hand holding the small silver drive was shaking. This felt like a final act, locking away my mother's ghost. I placed the drive on the velvet-lined shelf. It looked so small, so insignificant in the face of all this security. I hesitated before closing the door. I could feel him behind me. I hadn't realized how close he had come, and he was not touching me, but he was there. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a solid presence at my back that felt more tangible than a wall. His breath, slow and steady, stirred the small hairs on the back of my neck. I shivered. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the distant, drumming roar of the rain against the glass. I pushed the heavy steel door shut. It closed with a deep, final thud. And then I turned. It was a mistake. Or perhaps it was the only thing I could have done. He didn't move back. He stood his ground, and I turned directly into his space. My face was inches from his chest. I was surrounded by him, his scent of wool and rain, his physical warmth, his absolute stillness. I had to tilt my head all the way back to look up at him. We were separated by half a heartbeat, an inch of air. His gray eyes were not cold. They were not analytical. They were dark, molten, the color of the storm-tossed ocean outside. He wasn't looking at me like I was a problem to be solved. He was looking at me like he was starving. This was it, the moment on the roof, the spark in the alley, the tension in the elevator. It was all fire, and I was gasoline, and we were finally in the same enclosed space. My heart eye, which had been hammering, simply stopped. It seized in my chest, waiting. He moved slowly, so slowly it was almost painful. It wasn't a lunge or a grab. It was a decision executed with deliberate control. It gave me every possible second to pull away, to turn my head, to say no. I didn't move. I was paralyzed. I was mesmerized. His head dipped. His lips brushed mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a question, whispered in a language of touch. It was feather-light, impossibly soft, and devastatingly warm. He was asking for permission. I let out a shaky breath I hadn't known I was holding. It ghosted across his mouth. His hands, which had been at his sides, rose. They settled on my waist. His palms were broad and warm, the heat seeping through the thin fabric of my shirt. They didn't pull me closer. They didn't grip or demand. They just rested there, holding me, anchoring me to the spot. He pulled back, just a fraction. His eyes opened, locking with mine. He was waiting for my answer. I answered him. My own hands, which had been balled into useless fists at my sides, lifted. I placed them on his chest. I felt the hard, solid muscle beneath his shirt, the steady, powerful beat of his heart. It was so much calmer than my own. I rose up on my toes, just that little bit, and I met his mouth. This time it was a kiss. It was slow. It was deep. It was like sinking into warm, dark water. It was full of all the words we couldn't say, the fear, the protection, the terror, the tension. It was a silent, mutual admission. I see you. You are not alone. His hands tightened, just slightly, on my waist, pulling me a bare inch closer, until there was no air left between us. My fingers curled, gripping the front of his shirt. My other hand slid up, over his shoulder, my fingers tangling in the thick, soft hair at the nape of his neck. We were both fully clothed. We were standing in the middle of a library, in a fortress, while a war gathered outside. But the contact was an electric shock. A current ran through every nerve in my body, starting where his hands held my waist and my lips met his. It pooled, hot and heavy, low in my stomach. We broke apart, but we didn't separate. We were still breathing the same air. I was breathless, my lungs burning. I rested my forehead against his collarbone, my eyes closed, just trying to find my center. I could feel him breathing, a low, steady rhythm. A small sound escaped me, a combination of a laugh and a sob. It was relief. It was terror. It was everything. A low chuckle vibrated through his chest, and I felt it against my forehead. He dipped his head, his lips brushing the hair at my temple. His voice was a whisper. A rumble against my skin, meant only for me. "If this is too fast," he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. "Say the word." He was giving me the out, the control. He was telling me I could stop this right now, and he would let me say the word. I pulled my head back, just enough to look up at him. My hands were still on his shoulders. His were still on my waist. "Stay," I whispered. It wasn't the word he was expecting. It wasn't stop. It wasn't go. It was stay. Stay here with me. Don't leave me alone. The hardness in his expression, the tension in his jaw, it all just softened. He understood. He didn't kiss me again. He didn't lead me to a bedroom. He kept one arm securely around my waist and guided me the few steps to the long, deep leather sofa that faced the fire. He sat, pulling me down with him. I curled up against his side, my legs tucked under me, fitting against him as if the spot had been carved out for me. He reached for the heavy cashmere blanket folded on the armrest and draped it over us both, cocooning us in warmth. My head found the natural hollow of his shoulder. He rested his chin on the top of my head. One of his hands found mine under the blanket, his fingers lacing through mine. His thumb began to stroke the back of my hand, a small, repetitive, calming gesture. We sat there for a long time, an hour, maybe more. The only sounds were the pop and crackle of the fire, the relentless drumming of the rain on the glass, and the steady beat of his heart under my ear. It was the safest I had felt in 10 years. "You've learned to live by running," he said, his voice quiet, vibrating through his chest into my ear. I stiffened, but I didn't pull away. From Kovac, from the men in the alley. You even ran on the fire escape when I told you to. I nodded against his shirt. It's all I've ever known. I whispered, run, stay invisible, don't make trouble. When I was 12, I learned that staying still gets you hurt. It gets you noticed by the wrong people. Running is survival. I learned the opposite. I looked up at him. His profile was stark, carved by the firelight. I grew up on those docks, he said, his voice raw, stripped of its usual command. Old cinder, I wasn't born into this. I took it, and on the docks, if you run, you're prey. It's that simple. You stand your ground, you hit back harder. You protect what's yours, or it gets taken from you. He looked down at me, and his gray eyes were so clear, the storm in them stilled. To me, love is just another word for protection, he said. It's building a wall so high that no one can ever touch the person inside. I saw it then, this house, the fortress, the guards, the cameras, the armored cars, me in this room, wrapped in his blanket. This was how Cassian Rourke loved. It was fierce. It was possessive. It was absolute. I'm tired of running, I whispered. The admission felt huge, like I was handing him a piece of my soul. His hand tightened on mine. He brought my knuckles to his lips, pressing a kiss to my skin that was chaste, yet more possessive than any kiss to my mouth. Good, he said, his voice a low growl, because I'm not letting you go. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a promise, unwritten, unsigned, but sealed in the firelight. From now on, we run or we stand, but we do it together. The quiet of the library, the warmth of the fire, the feeling of safety in Cassian's arms, it lasted for exactly 12 hours. The next afternoon, we were in motion, not running, Cassian had said, but relocating. I was in the back of the same armored SUV, the one that smelled of leather and power. Cassian was beside me, his face a hard mask, his laptop open. Inez was in the front passenger seat, speaking in low tones into a satellite phone. Merrick drove, and a second, identical SUV followed us, a 2-car convoy. We were deep in the city's infrastructure, using the Larkspur Tunnel, a commercial vehicle-only artery that ran beneath the old Cinder District. The tunnel was old, damp, and lit by humming, sickly yellow lights. The BUI has set up a perimeter around the Huron station, Inez said, twisting in her seat. Hollis is forcing a play. He's desperate. He's sloppy, Cassian replied without looking up from his screen. He's telegraphing. We'll be at the new site in 20 minutes. Then we see what Miriam Elridge really left for us. That's when the world ended. It wasn't a loud explosion. It was a series of heavy, deafening thumps against the chassis, like a giant was hitting us with a sledgehammer. The lights in the tunnel went out. The SUV's entire dashboard went black. EMP, Merrick yelled, his voice tight. Sensors are jammed. We're blind. The SUV, now lit only by the red emergency glow of the cabin's backup lights, fishtailed on the wet pavement. Merrick was fighting the wheel, but the power steering was gone. Behind us, I heard the screech of our follow car as it slammed into the tunnel wall. More thumps rained down on us. They weren't trying to blow us up. They were trying to stop us, to disable us, to trap us in a concrete tube. Merrick Cassian's voice was a blade. Exit, now. I can't see the exits. The electronics are fried. I have no map. Merrick roared, wrenching the wheel with his full body, the SUV groaning. I looked out the side window, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. The red emergency lights in the tunnel were still on, spaced every 100 feet. I could see the wall. I saw the sparks as bullets ricocheted off our armor. They're coming, I whispered. Headlights appeared behind us. 2 of them, 3, black vans pinning us. There, Merrick shouted, pointing to a small, dark opening in the wall ahead. A technical exit. It's not on my map. It's probably a dead end. Take it, Cassian ordered. Merrick spun the wheel. The SUV lurched, its tires screaming, and we slammed into the opening. It was a narrow, unlit concrete passageway, barely wider than the vehicle. The side mirrors snapped off with a sound like gunfire. We scraped against the wall, a horrible, high-pitched shriek of metal on concrete, and then we were in total darkness. Merrick hit the brakes. The engine was still running, but the headlights were dead. We were trapped. "It's a dead end," V. Merrick said, his voice grim. "I can't reverse. We're wedged in." "No," I said. Both men turned to me. The red cabin light painted Cassian's face in blood and shadow. "It's not a dead end," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm, distant. "I know this tunnel. I know the map." "What?" Cassian demanded. "My old job, before the coffee shop, I did late-night data entry for a shipping logistics company. Their office was in the Harborside building. The building, it connects to the Larkspur's emergency system. I used to be so bored. I memorized the fire escape plans. All of them. This isn't a dead end. It's a maintenance spur. It runs parallel to the main tunnel for half a mile. Then it surfaces in a storm drain on Water Street. There's a sharp right turn in about 200 feet. It's tight." Merrick stared at me through the rearview mirror. "You're sure?" "Yes." Cassian didn't hesitate. "Go. Nora, you navigate. Tell him every turn." "There are no lights, sir." "Then we make our own." Cassian said. He ripped a heavy-duty flashlight from a clip above his head and shined it through the windshield. The beam cut a weak, yellow circle in the absolute black. "Go," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Straight for about 200 feet, then a hard right. Be ready for it." Merrick floored the accelerator. The SUV leaped forward, its engine roaring in the confined space. The beam of Cassian's flashlight was our only guide. "Now!" I yelled. Merrick wrenched the wheel. The SUV skidded, the side of the vehicle slamming into the far wall with a groan that rattled my teeth. But we made the turn. We were in another equally dark tunnel. Dark. We burst out of a grate and onto a cobblestone street, landing with a bone-jarring crash. We were in Old Cinder, 3 blocks from the water. We were clear. 10 minutes later, we were in a different kind of safe house. This one was a sub-basement in a nondescript warehouse, all concrete, steel beams, and the smell of ozone from humming computer servers. Merrick had one of the attackers a man in black tactical gear, his face bloody zip-tied to a steel pillar. Cassian stood in front of him, dabbing a cut on his own hand with a cloth. "Project White Raven," he said. It wasn't a question. The man spat blood on the floor. "Go to hell!" Cassian looked at Merrick. "Leave us." Merrick and I went to the other side of the room, by the servers, but I could still hear. I heard one sharp, wet crack. I heard the man gasp. "Project White Raven," Cassian repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "Sebastian Vale's contingency plan, a full-scale takedown. He's not just after the data anymore. He's after my entire organization. You were just the first wave, weren't you?" The man was sobbing now. "Yes, it's a decapitation strike. He wants you, and he wants the key. He wants the girl." "He can't have her," Cassian said. Inez, who had arrived separately, was working at a terminal, the small silver USB drive plugged into a humming piece of equipment. "I'm in," she said, her voice tight. We all turned. "He was right," Inez said, her eyes wide. "This isn't just money laundering. Cassian, it's a map. It's a web. It's a list of secret agreements, payoffs, and kill orders. It's a treaty." She pointed to the screen. "Look, 9th Street Covenant, and a BUI file number. Agent Hollis, a payment of $200,000, another one to a Port Authority official. This is how Vale built his empire. He didn't just blackmail officials. He partnered with them. He's been using BUI informants to feed him information on his rivals for years." My mother had found the skeleton key to the entire city's underworld. I leaned closer, my eyes scanning the lines of code, the log files, and then I saw it. A single, short file name in a folder labeled Contingency. "Me, Arcadia?" "Arcadia," I whispered. "I know that place." Cassian looked at me. M.E., your mother. Arcadia Cold Storage, I said, the memory surfacing like a cold, dark fish. It's an old, abandoned fish packing plant down by the docks. My mother used to take me there. It sounds crazy, but she was an auditor, and they were one of her clients before they went bust. She said she was checking their inventory, but it was just this huge, empty, freezing building. We'd go on weekends. She'd tell me to wait in the office while she counted the fish. She wasn't counting fish, Cassian said, his eyes blazing. She was building a dead drop. She was hiding the data. The USB isn't the whole thing. It's just the key. The rest of it is at Arcadia. Then we go, Merrick said. No, Inez interjected, her voice sharp and calculating. It's a trap. Vale knows. If we go, he'll be waiting. That's what Project White Raven is. He's not just trying to stop us, he's hurting us. He wants us to go to Arcadia. So we give him what he wants. Cassian said, No, Inez said. We go one step further. We leak a rumor. We use one of our double agents inside the BUI. We tell them we have the data, that it's all been copied, and that it's being sent to a federal contact tonight. We make Vale panic. We make him think he's out of time. He'll pull all his resources to one place to stop the transfer. He'll expose his entire hand. And while he's busy chasing a ghost, Cassian finished, a slow, cold smile spreading across his face, we go to Arcadia. Exactly, Inez said. It was a brilliant plan, cold, logical, and ruthless. Cassian nodded, his eyes locked with his strategists. Do it, Inez turned to her terminal, her fingers flying, and as I watched her profile lit by the green glow of the server's monitors, I saw something. A flicker in her eyes. As she looked at Cassian, there was the same cold, calculating light as always, but underneath it, there was a flash of something else, something hard, something icy. It was there and gone in a second, but it made the hair on my arms stand up. That night, we were back at Rook House, the fortress on the cliff. The plan was set for the following evening. I was on the terrace, the same one where the sniper had nearly killed us. I couldn't sleep. The wind was howling, and the sea was a chaos of white foam far below. I heard the door slide open. It was Cassian. He came and stood beside me, not speaking, just sharing the storm. He draped his jacket over my shoulders. You're cold, he said. I'm scared, I admitted. You were brave today, in the tunnel. I wasn't brave. I was just busy. He smiled, a real smile this time, and it lit up his face. That's what bravery is, Nora. He started to say something else, but he was cut off by a new sound, a high-pitched, electric whine that cut through the roar of the wind. It wasn't a car, it wasn't a person. Cassian's head snapped up, his eyes went wide, not with fear, but with sudden, violent understanding. Drone. I looked up and saw it. A small, black shape, no bigger than a hawk, hovering just over the edge of the terrace, its red camera light glowing like a demon's eye. Strapped to its underside was a gray, block-like package. Time stopped. I was frozen. I was the girl in the alley again. Cassian wasn't... He moved with a speed that didn't seem human. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just acted. He grabbed me by the waist, his arm like a steel band, and he threw himself backward, using his body as a shield, covering me, pulling me with him as we crashed through the glass terrace doors and onto the hard stone floor of the library. The world exploded behind us. The sound was a physical blow, a solid wall of force that hit my back. Even with him on top of me, the glass wall of the library, the one that faced the sea, bowed inward and then disintegrated into a million tiny diamonds. The air was sucked out of the room and then rushed back in, full of fire, shrapnel, and the smell of high explosives. We were alive. I was alive, pinned beneath Cassian's solid weight, my face pressed into his shirt, which already smelled like smoke. The alarms of the house were screaming. He pushed himself off me, his movements urgent, checking my arms, my face. his hands frantic but gentle. "Are you hit? Are you hurt?" "No," I gasped, the air thin and full of dust. I'm okay." He helped me to my feet, his body still shielding me from the gaping, flaming hole where his terrace used to be. Merrick was there, weapon drawn, his face a mask of fury. The attack was over, but the true horror was just sinking in. The sniper at the hotel could have been a lucky guess. The ambush in the tunnel was an interception. But this was different. This was a targeted strike on a private, unlisted, fortress-like residence whose location was known to only a handful of people. Inez's plan, her brilliant, cold plan, her icy gaze. I looked at Cassian, and I knew he was thinking the same thing. Someone inside the house had told them exactly where to strike. The smell of explosives and burned ozone hung in the air. A toxic perfume. We had relocated again, this time to the deepest, most secure level of Rook House, a concrete bunker beneath the foundation, designed to withstand an earthquake or a direct missile strike. The air was cold, recycled, and unnervingly silent. Inez was at a different terminal, her face pale but composed. The drone attack had shaken everyone. The traitor was among us. I could feel the suspicion like a drop in temperature, a silent accusation hanging over Inez, over Merrick, over everyone. But there was no proof, just a gaping, flaming hole in the library above us. "The drive," Cassian said, his voice flat, cutting through the tension. "Open it, all of it, now." Inez nodded, her fingers moving over the console. "It's not that simple. The biometric lock was just layer 1. The file system is encrypted with a secondary protocol. It requires a voice key and a DNA sample." "DNA?" Merrick asked, his arms crossed. "Saliva, a mouth swab. It's keyed to Nora." Inez pulled a small, sterile kit from a drawer. My stomach turned, but I stepped forward. I did as she instructed, my hand shaking as I sealed the swab and handed it to her. She slotted it into a small analyzer connected to the console. "And the voice key," Inez said, "it's a passphrase. It could be anything." I looked at the screen. A single, empty audio prompt waited. What would she have chosen? What words? I thought of the note, the pager. 0917 Duanovinha. I whispered, remembering the initials on the drive, Miriam Elridge. Inez typed it in. The screen flashed incorrect. "Please state the passphrase." "It's not her name," I said, thinking, "it's a message. It's for me." I leaned toward the microphone. My voice was a hoarse whisper. "Bring it home." For a long second, the screen was frozen. Then the word authenticating flashed, the DNA analyzer word, then beeped. "Voice print match, DNA match, welcome. Nora." The file system unlocked. It wasn't spreadsheets. It wasn't ledgers. It was a single, large video file. Inez double-clicked it. My mother's face filled the screen. I choked back a sob. This wasn't the blurry, 20-year-old photo from a missing persons report. This was her, alive. She looked tired, older than I remembered, her dark hair pulled back. She was sitting in a dark room, maybe an office, the camera on her laptop. She looked right at me, right into me. "Hello, Nora," she said, her voice. God, her voice. I hadn't heard it in over a decade. If you are watching this, it means two things. It means you are in terrible trouble, and it means I may already be gone. She took a deep, shaky breath. I don't have time to explain everything. I was an auditor. I found something I shouldn't have. A slush fund, a dark account, hidden inside the city's own infrastructure budget. It was being run by an organization I'd never heard of. CACT, the Coastal Anti-Corruption Task Force, a ghost agency. But their money was very real, and it was poison. They were using it to control things, to buy judges, to silence witnesses. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and silent. I didn't wipe them away. "I was threatened," my mother continued, her eyes hardening with a resolve I'd forgotten she had. "They told me to stop, to forget. They mentioned you. Nora, they knew your school schedule. They knew your favorite ice cream shop. So I did what I had to. I couldn't go to the police. CACT was the police, or part of them. So I hid the data. I scattered it. I broke it into pieces and I hid it all over Port Meridian, in places only I would know. This key, this drive is the map. It's the only thing that can put it all back together. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. You can't trust the law, baby, but you can't do this alone. I couldn't. I had to find someone outside the system, an outlaw, but one with a code, a man with honor, his name. His name isn't important, but his code name is Rook. My head snapped up. I turned, my tear-filled eyes locking on Cassian. He was standing perfectly still, his face carved from stone. He was watching the video, watching my mother, and his expression was one I had never seen before. It was raw. It was pain. Rook! The Rook Syndicate. You, I whispered, the words stolen from my lungs. Cassian's gaze slowly, heavily, moved from the screen to me. She contacted me. He said, his voice was a low gravel, rough with a confession he had held for 10 years. It was a long time ago, before this. He gestured to the bunker, the organization. I was just a kid on the docks, but I had a reputation. I was Rook. I moved things. I kept secrets. She found me. My mother's voice, still playing on the video, was a haunting echo. He promised he would watch out for the data. He promised. I failed her, Cassian said, his eyes locking with mine, holding me captive with his guilt. What? I tried to get her out, the night she was supposed to leave, the night she was going to give me the final piece. We were supposed to meet, but she never showed. I thought she ran. I thought she got scared and left. I thought she abandoned you, just like everyone else did. No, my mother said from the screen, as if she could hear him. I can't go. Not yet. I'm missing one last file. I have to go back for it. It's the only thing that proves the link. Rook, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I have to finish this. For Nora, I love you, baby. Be strong. Find Arcadia. The video ended, the screen went black. The silence in the room was a living, screaming thing. She didn't run, I whispered, my legs giving out. I didn't fall. Cassian was there. He crossed the room in one stride and caught me, his arms wrapping around me, holding me up. She chose to stay, he said, his voice thick. She chose to go back for that last piece of evidence, and they caught her. I wasn't who I am now. I didn't have the power. I didn't have the reach. I went to the meeting spot, and she was just gone. I failed to protect her. The sobs tore out of me then, not quiet. They were the ugly, desperate cries of a 12-year-old girl who had just found and lost her mother all over again. I buried my face in his chest, my fists clenching his shirt, and I wept. He didn't say, "It's okay." He didn't promise to fix it. He just held me. He wrapped his arms around me like a shield, his hand cradling the back of my head. And he let me break. He just stayed. He absorbed the shock of it, his presence the only solid thing in my collapsing world. It was a long time before I could breathe again. When I finally could, I pulled back, my face slick with tears. He didn't let me go, just loosened his grip. He reached out a hand, his thumb brushing a tear from my cheek with a tenderness that cracked my heart open. "Inez," he said, his voice still rough, not turning to her. "Arcadia, find it." Inez, who had been standing respectfully silent, turned back to the console. The metadata. "It's here, in the video file. It's a map. The coordinates are linked to timestamps." She was typing fast. "It's not just one location. It's a trail, a path leading to a final rendezvous." "Where?" I asked. My voice wrecked. "Pier 9, Inez said. "The old shipping depot. It's set for a specific time. It's keyed to the tide." "When?" Cassian demanded. "Tomorrow night," Inez said, her eyes widening. 9:17 p.m., the peak of the king tide, that's when the water is highest. That's when the location is accessible. 09:17, bring it home. My mother had planned it all 10 years ago. A date with destiny, set by the moon. As if on cue, a secure line on the desk buzzed. Not Cassian's phone, a hard line. Inez answered it, listened, and her face went grim. She held the receiver out to me. "It's Agent Hollis," and she said, "For you." I took the phone, my hand steady now. The grief had burned away the fear, leaving something hard and cold in its place. "This is Nora." "Miss Elridge, Nora, thank God." Hollis's voice was smooth, but there was a new urgency to it. "You need to listen to me. We know you have the drive. We don't know what's on it, but Vale is pulling out all the stops. He's gone scorched earth. If that data gets out, if he even thinks it's going to get out, you will be target number 1 for every—" "I already am, Agent Hollis," I said, and hung up the phone. I turned back to Cassian. He was watching me, his gray eyes reading my face. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by a shared, cold resolve. Later that night, the alarms were off. The house was quiet, save for the wind whistling through the shattered library. I couldn't sleep. I found myself in the main kitchen, the only room that felt remotely normal. I was trying to make coffee, my hands fumbling with the machine. I heard his footsteps on the stone floor. He came up behind me. I didn't turn. I just leaned back, and his arms came around me, his front pressing against my back, caging me in. He rested his chin on my shoulder. We stood there, in the dark kitchen, the smell of coffee grounds and old grief in the air. "This is my fight now, too," I whispered. "It was always your fight, Nora," he murmured, his breath warm against my neck. "You just didn't know it. I'm not running anymore." "I know." He held me tighter. It wasn't a soft, comforting embrace. It was a hard, desperate grip. It wasn't just love. It was a mutual, unspoken vow. It was a promise to act, tomorrow. We would go to Pier 9, tomorrow. We would finish what my mother started. The plan was called Reverse Wave. It was pure Inez, which meant it was brilliant, cold-blooded, and deeply cynical. Sebastian Vale expected us to go to ground, to move through the shadows. So we did the opposite. We threw a party. Not just any party. The Velvet Crown Holdings annual charity gala, an event that had been on the city's social calendar for months. The venue, the Meridian Glass Museum, it was the most exposed, most public, most indefensible building in the city. A massive, transparent dome of glass and steel perched on the edge of the harbor. It was a glittering fishbowl for the city's elite. And tonight, it was full of press, politicians, and a river of old money. The glamour was the camouflage. I was part of that camouflage. I was dressed in a simple, elegant black dress, my hair pulled back. On my lapel was a badge that read Nora Elridge, curatorial assistant. I had a clipboard I didn't need and an earpiece that was my lifeline. Cassian was on the far side of the dome, playing his part to perfection. He was the cold, distant sponsor. He moved through the crowd in a flawless tuxedo, a glass of untouched champagne in his hand, his gray eyes bored and unapproachable. He hadn't looked at me once. He couldn't. We were strangers. The distance felt like a physical ache. The real war was happening 10 feet beneath our feet. The museum's main hall was a massive, suspended glass floor. Below it, in the cavernous concrete service level, Merrick and Inez's tech team had built a mobile command center. As the string quartet played Vivaldi above, they were executing a high-speed digital assault, using my mother's key to remotely access the data fragments hidden in the Arcadia servers. The gala wasn't just a distraction, it was a shield, generating so much public data and media noise that it masked the massive data transfer happening right under everyone's noses. "Target acquired," Merrick's voice murmured in my ear. "North entrance, white suit, no mistaking him." I turned, my movements slow and casual. He was right, a man, slim and predatory, was gliding through the crowd. He wore a snow-white suit, a black shirt, and on his lapel, a small silver pin in the shape of the number 9. He was one of Vale's... "I see him," I whispered, my lips barely moving. "Inez, do you have eyes?" "Affirmative," Inez's voice replied, cool as ice. "He's moving toward the west terrace. I'll intercept." I watched her move. She was the perfect hostess, smiling, her dark hair a flawless sheet. She intercepted the man in white, her hand touching his arm. She laughed at something he said, a bright, social sound that sent a chill down my spine. Then she was guiding him, not to the terrace, but toward a corridor marked staff only. "She's taking him to the secondary security checkpoint," I reported. "I see it." Merrick's voice was a low growl. "I'm on the security feed. She's taking him past the kitchens toward... Wait a minute." The line was silent for a beat. "Merrick," I prompted. "The feed," he said, his voice tight with a new, cold fury. "The camera in that hallway, it just went to static. A 12-second loop, just long enough for them to pass that service entrance." My heart hammered. "Are you sure?" "Inez's personal schedule, which she logged this morning, has her inspecting the kitchen catering at this exact time. She scheduled the blind spot. She's not taking him to be searched. She's letting him in. The drone, the ambush, the sniper, it was her. It was all her." I felt dizzy, the sound of the quartet turning to a screech in my ears. I steadied myself against a marble pillar, my eyes searching for Cassian. He was trapped, surrounded by media. "Stay on him," I whispered to Merrick. "We don't move until the data is..." "Mr. Rourke," a new voice, slick and unwelcome, cut through the party's hum. I turned. Agent Rain Hollis, his BUI badge clipped to his off-the-rack suit, was standing in front of Cassian. He looked rumpled, furious, and completely out of place. He was holding a piece of paper. "I have a warrant," Hollis announced, his voice loud enough to make several people turn, "to search the premises for an item, a piece of stolen digital property." Cassian didn't even blink. He smiled. It was a cold, bright, predatory smile. "Agent Hollis, what a pleasant surprise," Cassian said, his voice smooth as silk. He placed a hand on Hollis's shoulder, a gesture that was half welcome, half imprisonment, "but you seem to have me at a disadvantage." He turned, guiding the flustered agent directly toward a cluster of cameras from Port Meridian's largest news station. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cassian said, his voice now booming with fake charisma, "this is Agent Rain Hollis of the BUI. He's just arrived to... What was it? Agent..." He held a microphone from a nearby reporter toward Hollis's face. The red on-air light was glowing. Hollis froze. His face went from red to white. He was trapped. He couldn't execute a vague fishing warrant on live television without looking like a fool or, worse, a puppet. We are just ensuring the safety of the city's artifacts," Hollis stammered, pulling away from the microphone. "Standard procedure." "Of course," Cassian said, his smile never wavering. "Enjoy the party." Hollis retreated, his face a mask of humiliation. It was a perfect checkmate. A new voice crackled in my ear, one of the techs from below. "We're in. The final fragment is merging. My God. It's all here. We're at 99%. Data transfer complete. We have it. We have it all." A wave of relief so profound it nearly buckled my knees. We did it. My mother. We did it. I leaned back against the pillar, closing my eyes for just 1 second, and in the relative quiet, I heard a new sound. It was separate from the music, from the chatter. It was a rhythmic click-clack from the metal service stairs hidden behind the pillar, the ones that led directly down to the tech bunker. Click-clack. Click. Click-clack. It was a heel, a stiletto heel, hitting the metal grate. It was a pattern. My fingers, resting on the clipboard, began to tap it out, translating. Dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, 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 dash, dash, dot, 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 0917. My blood ran colder than the ocean outside. Inez. She wasn't in the kitchen. She wasn't with Vale's man. She was here. She was walking down to the command center, to the freshly copied data. The traitor was making her final move. Before I could even press the button to warn Merrick, my other earpiece, the small, flesh-colored one Cassian had given me for a private channel, crackled to life. It was a channel only he and I had, but the voice was not his. It was Inez, a cold digital whisper, speaking directly into my skull. "Don't bother, Nora," she said, as if she could see me. "Merrick's feed is already looped. The texts are taken care of. They think you're still at your post." "Inez," I gasped. "Shut up. You were a good little key. Nora, but your part is over. Now, listen, I have a man. The man in the white suit, actually, on the mezzanine. He has a rifle with a laser sight, and it is pointed directly at Cassian's heart. I see you look at him. I see you try to signal. I see you even breathe wrong. And he's dead. Am I clear?" I looked at Cassian, and he was across the room, smiling, a king in his castle, completely oblivious. And then I saw it. A tiny pinprick of red light hovering on the white fabric of his shirt. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice dead. "The original drive, your mother's key. It's the only one with the biometric seal. Vale wants it, and I want Vale to have it. You will leave the museum, alone. You will walk to Pier 9. You will bring me the USB. You have 1 hour. And Cassian, you do this, he lives, you fail, he dies, simple. And Nora, don't for a second think you're smart enough to play this. I've been running this game since before you knew it existed." The line clicked dead. I was alone, trapped in a glass bowl, surrounded by enemies I could see and enemies I couldn't. I looked at Cassian, the red dot still on his chest. Inez was right. I couldn't warn him. I couldn't fight her here. But she was also wrong. I wasn't a key. I wasn't a pawn. My mother didn't raise a victim. I pushed off the pillar. I would not let Cassian die tonight. I would not let Inez win. I wouldn't go to Pier 9 to surrender. I would go to draw the entire war to the water, away from him. I slipped out of the side entrance, into the rain, a ghost leaving the party. The game was changing, and I was about to change the rules. 9:10 p.m. The fog off the harbor was a living thing, a thick, wet shroud that swallowed sound and light. It clung to me, cold and damp, as I walked the length of the abandoned pier. Pier 9. I was alone, but I was not unarmed. In my pocket, my fingers were wrapped around a cheap silver USB drive I'd grabbed from the bunker's office, a worthless fake, pinned to the collar of my black dress. Hidden by the lapel was a microdot microphone, and tucked into the waistband of my dress, digging into my skin, was a 3-inch folding knife. My hand had been shaking so badly when I took it from Merrick's utility bag, I'd nearly dropped it. My steps were loud on the rotting wood planks. The only other sounds were the groan of the pier on its pilings and the heavy, rhythmic slap of the king tide against the shore. They were waiting at the end, just as Inez had said, under a single, buzzing, sulfur-yellow lamp that cut a weak circle in the mist. Sebastian Vale and Inez Falk. Vale was exactly as his reputation suggested. He was slim, dressed in an immaculate dark suit, and he was smiling. His smile was a thin, sharp blade. Inez stood beside him, her face a pale, composed mask. She looked at me with nothing, no anger, no regret, just business. "Miss Elridge, Nora," Vale said, his voice smooth and amused. He even clapped, a slow, soft sound that the fog absorbed. "Punctual, I must confess, as I was waiting. I couldn't decide if you were exceptionally brave or just spectacularly foolish." I kept my eyes on Inez. Why, the word was torn out of me. She actually laughed, a cold, brittle sound. Why, because I was tired. Nora, tired of being the strategist, the right hand, the shadow. Cassian builds an empire, and I'm supposed to be grateful for cleaning up his messes, and he gets the throne. I get the spreadsheets. I'm done being his number two. She's also exceptionally well paid for her new position, Vale added, gliding a step closer. The smell of his expensive cologne cut through the salt air. Money, power, and, I believe, a little revenge. An old wound, she said, something about Cassian not noticing her in the way she wanted. Inez's face hardened. He sees what he wants to protect. He never saw me. Enough. Vale sighed, his good humor evaporating. He held out a gloved hand. The drive, a fair exchange, your mother's original USB, for Cassian's life. My heart, which had been a cold stone, stopped. He's not here. I looked around, at the shadows, at the sniper I couldn't see, the red dot at the gala. It was a bluff. Vale laughed, a genuine, barking sound. A bluff, oh, my dear, no. That was just the threat. The consequence is very real. We moved him while you were walking over. We knew you wouldn't risk signaling him there. My blood turned to ice. Where is he? Proof, I said, my voice shaking but hard. I hated that it shook. I'm not giving you anything until I see he's alive. Vale studied me, that thin smile returning. He was enjoying this. He was a cat playing with a half-dead mouse. Fair, Inez. Inez pulled a tablet from her coat. She tapped the screen and held it up. It was a live feed, dimly lit, grainy, but unmistakable. An engine room. I could hear the heavy, metallic thrum even over the wind. Cassian. He was alive. His jacket was gone. His shirt was torn, and his face was bruised, but he was alive. He was tied to a massive, red-painted main valve, his hands bound with heavy-duty zip ties. He wasn't struggling, he was watching, his eyes burning with a cold, analytical fire. He was looking for an angle. He was looking for a way out. The Riverline ferry, Vale said, his voice full of satisfaction. The old one, docked for repairs 2 miles downriver. Its engine room is very, very loud, and in approximately... He glanced at his platinum watch. 10 minutes, a small, precisely placed charge will go off, severing that main steam pipe right above his head. He'll be scalded. A very unpleasant way to go. Unless, of course, you hand me that drive. 10 minutes. I stared at Cassian's face on the screen. My hand, hidden at my side, reached up to my collar. As if I were nervously adjusting the fabric, my thumb and forefinger pinched the small, cold dot of the microphone. A tiny, tactile click confirmed it was active. Are you listening? Hollis, I thought. The prayer, a desperate scream in my head. Are the good guys coming? The only answer was the wind. I was alone. The drive, Vale repeated, his hand still out, his patience gone. I nodded. Okay. I reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around the fake USB. I pulled it out, holding it up so the yellow light glinted off the cheap silver. Here. Vale took a step forward, his eyes hungry. I met his gaze. You'll never finish what my mother started. And with all my strength, I threw the drive. I didn't throw it at him. I threw it over his shoulder. A high, desperate arc into the black, churning water of the king tide. It vanished with a small, quiet splash. It worked. You fool! Vale screamed, spinning around, his gloved hand reaching out as if he could catch it. He lunged toward the edge of the pier, staring uselessly into the dark water. He was distracted. Inez wasn't. Her eyes, cold and furious, snapped to me. She was already reaching inside her coat, but I was faster. I wasn't the barista. I wasn't the student. I was the girl who had spent the last 6 months in a free, twice-a-week self-defense class at the community college gym because I was terrified of my landlord. I didn't run. I moved in. I slammed my left palm up under her chin, a hard jab that snapped her head back and made her teeth click. As she gasped, I grabbed her right wrist, the one going for the gun. I twisted, hard. I used her own height against her, dropping my weight, locking her arm. She shrieked, a sound of rage, not pain. I slammed my knee into her ribs. She buckled, and her hand, the one I wasn't holding, clawed at my face. I pulled back, and her gun, freed from its holster by her awkward angle, clattered to the wet, wooden planks. I didn't hesitate. I kicked it away from her and lunged for it, my hands closing over the cold, heavy steel. I spun, bringing it up, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold it. Vale was turning back, pulling his own weapon. It was too late. Whomp, whomp, whomp! The sound was alien. Not a gunshot, a suppressed, heavy thud. The man in the white suit, Vale's personal guard who had been emerging from the fog behind him, just crumpled. He didn't make a sound. A dark stain appeared on his pristine suit. "Rook cover," Merrick's voice. The fog exploded. Figures in black tactical gear materialized from behind shipping containers, from under the pier itself. Cassian's men. The air was full of muted pops and the zip of projectiles. They were aiming for knees, for shoulders. The pier was covered in old Port Authority security cameras. Cameras my mother's data had mapped. They were putting on a show, but a non-lethal one. Inez scrambled away, disappearing into the shadows. Vale fired 2 wild shots at the darkness and then dove behind a stack of rusted lobster traps. I didn't care. I was staring at the tablet, still clutched in Inez's abandoned hand on the ground. Cassian was still on the screen. He had heard the commotion, and he was pulling at his bonds, his eyes blazing. Merrick was suddenly at my side, a solid wall, shoving me down. "Nora, get down! We have him!" "No!" I screamed, grabbing his arm, pointing at the tablet. "He's not here. He's on the Riverline ferry. There's a bomb engine room. We have minutes." Merrick's eyes went from me to the screen. His face went pale. "Damn it, that's 2 miles downriver. We'll never get the cars through Vale's perimeter." The fight was still raging. A chaotic dance in the fog. One of Vale's men, on a sleek black motorcycle, tried to make a break for the street. One of Merrick's team tackled him, a flying full-body check that sent the man sprawling. The motorcycle skidded on the wet cobblestones, landing on its side not 10 feet from me. Its engine was still running. I looked at Merrick. I looked at the bike. The keys were in it. He saw the decision in my eyes before I even made it. "Nora, no, it's suicide. Wait for the team." But there was no time. I was already moving. I grabbed the handlebars, my dress ripping as I threw my leg over the seat. I righted the heavy machine. I had never ridden one in my life. I didn't care. "Nora," Merrick yelled, reaching for me. I twisted the throttle on the right handlebar, just like I'd seen in movies. The engine screamed, a high-pitched, furious sound. The bike leaped forward, fishtailing on the wet stones. I wasn't running away. I was running to... I flew off the pier, leaving Merrick and the firefight behind me, chasing the distant, rusted silhouette of the Riverline ferry. I was going to save him myself. The motorcycle died as I skidded onto the splintered, wet wood of the dock. I didn't care. I ran. The Riverline ferry was a massive, rusted ghost ship, dark and listing. Groaning as the high tide slapped against its hull, the air smelled of diesel, old iron, and the deep, cold rot of the river. I scrambled up the gangplank, my shoes slipping. The deck was empty. I found the hatch marked engine room and pulled. It was heavy, but my adrenaline was afire. I descended the metal ladder into the darkness. The noise hit me first, a deep, mechanical, thrumming vibration that I felt in my teeth. It was hot, and the air was thick with the smell of oil. Then I saw him. He was just as I had seen him on the tablet. He was tied to a massive, red-painted main valve, his arms bound behind the pipe with heavy-duty zip ties. He was alive. Above his head, strapped to the pipe with silver duct tape, was a gray block. A small red LED blinked, 0300. 3 minutes. "Cassian!" I screamed over the thrum of the engines. His head snapped up. His eyes, when they found me, were not filled with relief. They were blazing with a cold, terrifying fury. "Nora, get out, now! It's a bomb!" "I'm not leaving you!" I yelled. I pulled the small folding knife from my waistband. My hands were slick with blood and rain from the motorcycle grips. I started sawing at the thick plastic strap. It was impossibly thick. The knife was small, dull. "Nora, listen to me," he commanded, his voice a low roar over the noise. The timer. Look at the timer. You have to... You don't belong in this world, little girl. I froze, the knife slipping. Inez Falk stood on the metal catwalk above us. She was immaculate, not a hair out of place, her dark suit pristine. She held a gun, and it was aimed directly at my head. I told you I was running this game, and she said, her voice calm and clear as she walked slowly down the metal stairs. I didn't stop. I turned back to the strap, sawing desperately. My blood made the knife handle slippery. I choose the person. I grunted. Not the world. How sentimental. Inez sneered, stopping 10 feet away. He's just a man, a prize. I offered you a way out, Nora. You should have taken it. A lovely speech, Inez, truly. Sebastian Vale. He appeared from a different passageway, behind Inez, cutting off her only retreat. He also held a gun. He was not smiling. Inez spun, her own gun coming up, her composure finally breaking. Sebastian, what are you doing? The perimeter team. Is being dealt with by Mr. Rourke's men, I imagine, Vale said, his voice bored. And your team, at the gala. My team now. Did you really think I'd let you, the traitor, hold the only copy of that data, the drive you lost in the water? His eyes met mine, cold and dead. She gave me a fake, which means you still have the original. You played me. No, Inez gasped. You betrayed him. You'd betray me. Vale said. He aimed his gun at Inez. You're a pawn. Then he turned the gun slightly, his aim shifting between me and her. And she's a loose end. I'll just take the drive off her body. He was going to kill us all. The timer on the bomb read 0217, 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Vale Cashin's voice was a cannon blast. Vale looked at him, distracted by the man he thought was helpless. You came for me, Cassian said, but you didn't even check the room. With a roar of sheer, primal effort, Cassian put his bound hands on the red valve he was tied to and turned it. It wasn't the main pipe. It was a secondary pressure release. The world vanished in white. A scalding, high-pressure jet of steam erupted from a vent in the wall, shooting a perfect opaque screen between us and our attackers. The noise was a deafening shriek that drowned out even the engines. Vale screamed, a high, thin sound as the steam hit his face. He threw his arm up. Stumbling back, Inez dove for cover. It was the chance. I didn't go for the gun. My eyes darted around. On the bulkhead, coiled on a hook, was a thick, yellow, life-saving rope. As Vale stumbled out of the dissipating steam, his arm still raised, his eyes blinded, I grabbed the heavy, wet rope. I swung it, a low, hard arc. The thwack of the rope hitting his wrist was the loudest sound in the room. His gun flew from his grasp, skittering across the metal floor. It landed near Inez's feet. This was the moment. She lunged for it, Vale, seeing his weapon gone. Lunged for it, too. They were a tangle of expensive suits on the floor, clawing and fighting for the pistol. Nora the bomb, Cashin yelled. The timer, 0120, 1 minute and 20 seconds. I ignored the fight. I ran back to Cassian. The knife. Sawing, the plastic was starting to give. Freeze Buai, hands in the air. The voice was like a gunshot. Agent Rain Hollis. He stood at the top of the stairs, gun held in both hands, flanked by 2 tactical officers. Inez and Vale froze, their hands inches from the gun. Hollis, Vale spat, scrambling to his feet. Thank God! Arrest her! She's the traitor, I heard it all. Mr. Vale, Hollis said, his voice dead calm. He was a different man, no longer the stammering fool from the gala. The microphone on Miss Elridge, your confession, your betrayal of Inez. The link to CACT. We've been recording for the last 10 minutes. Vale's face collapsed. He made one last desperate lunge for the gun on the floor. Bang. A single, deafening gunshot echoed in the room. Vale cried out, clutching his arm, his hand a sudden, bright mess of blood. Hollis had shot him, non-fatal. Inez saw her chance. She scrambled away toward the other exit. I didn't even think. I still had the end of the yellow rope. I threw myself at her, tackling her at the knees. We hit the floor hard. She clawed at my face, but I was pure adrenaline. I wrapped the rope around her wrists, pulling it tight, the self-defense class coming back to me in a rush. "Cuff her!" Hollis yelled. One of the agents pulled me off. He was cuffing Inez with her own hands, using the yellow rope to secure her. Nora Cashin's voice, the timer. I looked, 0020, 20 seconds. I ran back, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't hold the knife. "There's no time to cut," Cassian yelled, his voice a raw command. "The panel! Open the panel on the front!" I ripped the plastic cover off the C4, wires, a mess of red, green, blue, and black. 10 seconds, Hollis yelled from the stairs. "Nora, look at me." I tore my eyes from the wires and looked at him. His gray eyes were steady, calm, holding me. He wasn't afraid. "You can do this," he said. "Listen to my voice. Only my voice. Do you see the blue wire?" "Yes," I sobbed. "Do you see the black wire?" "Yes." 7 seconds. "Grab them both," Cassian commanded. "Pull them, at the same time. Now. Nora, pull." I closed my eyes, I grabbed the wires, I pulled with all my strength. The timer on the display read 0001, and it went dark. Silence. The only sounds were the thrum of the engines, the slap of the water against the hull, Vale groaning, and Inez. Silent. The bomb was silent. My legs gave out. I collapsed against the pillar, my breath coming in ragged, painful sobs. I had done it. "Nora?" Cashin was still tied. I crawled back to him. I picked up the knife. My hands were steady now. I cut the final, frayed piece of plastic. His hands were free. He didn't rub his wrists. He didn't check the bomb. He didn't look at Vale or Hollis. He reached for me. His hands, raw and red, cupped my face. He pulled me up, and his arms wrapped around me, crushing me to his chest. I buried my face in his neck. He was real. He was warm. He smelled of smoke, steam, and me. He pulled back, his hands framing my face, his forehead pressing against mine. "Stay," he whispered. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a request. It was an answer. It was a proposal. It was everything. "I'm here," I whispered back. We walked out onto the deck of the ferry hours later, as the sun was just beginning to stain the sky purple. The wind was cold, sharp, and tasted of salt and freedom. Hollis was there, supervising the arrests of Vale and Inez, who was now in metal cuffs. He looked exhausted. He walked over to us. "The data," he said. "The real data your team copied from the gala. It's enough. It's enough to burn down SEACT, half the BUI, and Vale's entire network. Your mother, she was a hero, Miss Elridge. Is she—" I couldn't finish the question. "The data included protection files," Hollis said, his voice gentle. "If she's alive, she's deep in a federal program. Off the books. I will find her. I give you my word. I'll find her, and I'll tell her you're safe." I nodded, the tears coming again, but they were quiet now. Hollis left. It was just me and Cassian on the deck. The lights of Port Meridian were flickering in the dawn, blurry through my tears. He took off his torn, smoky jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. It still smelled like him. I looked up at him. "A wrong number," I whispered. "The rightest number of my life," and he replied, his voice rough. He kissed me then. Not the slow, questioning kiss in the library. This was raw. It was desperate. It was a promise of survival, a claim, a vow. His lips were firm, his arms a steel cage around my back, pulling me so close I couldn't breathe. It was a kiss that tasted of smoke, salt, and new beginnings. A single text message, a single wrong digit, had rewritten my entire life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us some extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.